guys, Ron here, and here it is. I have played Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, and now I have opinions. But since this game is a remake, I kinda have to talk about them in a different angle. Sinnoh is not one of my favorite regions, but far from my least favorite. I have my problems with Diamond and Pearl, and a tiny bit with Platinum, like the over-reliance on HMs and weird progression, and these games addressed some of them, but unfortunately BDSP didn't fix some of the flaws, and even added a couple of their own. Because of how faithful these games are to the original, a large percentage of my experience was virtually the same. And I'm not going to be talking about these elements because I'm not reviewing Diamond and Pearl, so it's going to feel like I'm harping too much on the negatives and changes, because the awesome aspects of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, like Sinnoh's route design, exploration, post-game, and atmosphere, all stem from the originals. While half of the video will be dedicated to the cons of BDSP, they only represent a small fraction of my feelings toward these games. I'm actually going to start with the negatives, then move on to the neutral stuff and general gameplay, and end up at the positive aspects. And since the cons come first, I'll start with... I want to begin by talking about the number one aspect of the game that contributed to my experience while playing, and that was the faithfulness of these games. Of course, I knew that these games were marketed as faithful remakes, and I was always in the mindset that BDSP weren't going to include much or any Platinum content, but it seems like fans don't have a set definition, or at the very least, a consensus as to what faithful remakes even mean. The answer is, it's relative. Every person has a different perspective based on precedent, so that means I was comparing the faithfulness of BDSP to other Pokémon remakes. Considering we already knew about additions to the game prior to release, like the Grand Underground, Following Pokémon, and EXP Share, I suspected these games would have quality of life updates, but still be more faithful than ORAS and Let's Go, since faithfulness was repeatedly marketed. These were always going to be Diamond and Pearl remakes, not Platinum remakes, and while you could be fine or angry about it, that was the mindset I had before playing. But as I played, at least to me, these felt less like Diamond and Pearl remakes and more like Diamond and Pearl Switch remasters. I have nothing against chibi style. Technically, ORAS is chibi, and I was totally on board with Link's Awakening's art style, but none of that excuses how one-to-one the overworld is. Even the cutscenes look like HD remasters of the original. Considering the Gen 4 overworld is already 3D, BDSP's world is just an enhanced version of it. There is barely any additional set dressing or details that make use of the fact that these games have been remade. Not just when it comes to the world, but the design, story, and progression. Apart from the Underground, there was no attempt to elevate the source material, and worse, they didn't attempt to fix a lot of the flaws that Diamond and Pearl had. You see, when people clamored for Platinum remakes, it wasn't just because it added stuff like the Battle Frontier or Distortion World, two things that wouldn't have made a difference to me in the long run, but rather it was because Platinum was a third version that was necessary to fix all the problems the original had, like the weird level scaling, awkward gym progression, bland overworld textures, and incomplete Pokémon availability, like how a lot of the cool new evolutions were only accessible in the post-game. These were all glaring flaws that Diamond and Pearl had, and they're all present in these remakes. These games would still be faithful to the essence of Sinnoh, even if their Platinum fixes were still included. When I'm playing Brilliant Diamond, there is no general feeling of, oh, I can't wait to get to this next place, I wonder how they translated it, because the answer is, they did it the exact same way. Not once did I say, oh, that's what that detail was supposed to be, it's more fleshed out now, because nothing was made deeper. Compare that to ORAS, where each interior has unique world-building details that weren't in the original. Even the very faithful routes had details that the originals didn't have, like Wingles flying around and craters in Route 114 and 15, which all helped make the environment feel more real. But they were still faithful. Nobody says Mr. Briny's house is less faithful now that it has wooden beams, more furniture, and a ceiling light. Even Let's Go, which had a very faithful overworld, had tons of details that are faithful to the original, but still elevate the source material. In BDSP, there are super select few places that have these sorts of minor changes, like the petals in Floroma Meadow, lighting in Eterna Forest just like in Platinum, and the snow and frost on the buildings in Snowpoint. These are all faithful to the spirit of the originals. They simply weren't in Diamond and Pearl because of the hardware limitations. So I thought these minor updates would be present throughout a majority of the game, but there is no good reason that they weren't. I'll talk about the graphics in general and what I did enjoy later in the review, but right now I'm talking about the general art style and philosophy of this game's appearance, and how there was no real time or effort put into making it look special. Ultimately, my experience wasn't that of playing a new highly anticipated Pokémon game, but rather just replaying Diamond and Pearl on the big screen, which was far from my experience of ORAS or Let's Go. At the end of the day, I had fun because they are literally Diamond and Pearl, and I had fun playing those games in the first place. But the one major addition that they did decide to include wasn't the most positive of changes in my experience. The EXP Share in its current form was added in X and Y, and in Sun and Moon it was reworked so like in Black and White the experience was based on the Pokemon's level, so it's more balanced. This helped eliminate grinding, and those who wanted a tougher playthrough could easily just turn it off. Best of both worlds, but starting from Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, the EXP Share became permanent, but Game Freak made those games with that in mind. Let's Go explicitly encouraged the constant catching of Pokemon and easy EXP gaining through Pokemon catching, so it was obvious they wanted you to have a team of more than 6 in order to not become super overleveled, in combination with the fact that the levels and teams of the gym leaders were more balanced than in Yellow. The permanent EXP Share returned in Sword and Shield, but the progression of these games were highly considered, especially now that you have 3 times the party options with the wild area available. The point is that these games were balanced around the EXP Share. But tacking on a permanent EXP Share on a game that wasn't made for it, without any changes to the existing level curve of the gym leaders and trainers, was a bad move in my opinion, especially in a region with so much to explore and many optional locations that you should be able to visit during the main game without worrying that your team will become overleveled. It was around the 3rd gym when I noticed this problem. My team was already overleveled for Maylene, and I knew that Crasher Wake's team was the same level as Maylene's despite the decent amount of content there was between them. This was fixed in Platinum, but in BDSP I had to assemble another 6 Pokemon and make various strategies in order to not become overleveled, like using my 2nd team when exploring optional locations. By the 8th gym, I had a team of 12 Pokemon, all at the same level as Volkner's average Pokemon, and I never once grinded. I only battled trainers. I imagined that my team would be 10 levels above Volkner's if I played the same way I did the original games, with a normal sized team. What's weird is that some of you didn't have this experience, and I don't know how. I suspect a lot of people just avoided a good amount of trainers or didn't notice that they were slightly overleveled at times. The fact is, I had to actively try to prevent this game from becoming way easier than it was in Gen 4, especially with Affection. Now that friendship is tied to Affection, unlike in Gen 6 or 7 where your Pokemon would dodge hits and land crits only if you actively play with them in a Me and Refresh or Pokemon Camp in Gen 8. But now with the following mechanic and general EXP Share, your Pokemon easily gain Affection, which makes battling gym leaders easy. I had to constantly give my Pokemon herbs to negate this. It's not perfect, but at least that option exists. It's the first game where my Pokemon surviving a hit or dodging felt really unsatisfying, because it wasn't earned. Now when I bring up the EXP Share and Affection to those who beat the game, they bring up how it was all necessary because of how tough the Elite Four, and especially Cynthia, were in these games. Let's talk about the Pokemon League battles. A lot of people say that the overleveling you get from EXP Share is fine considering you'll need that and Affection in order to beat Cynthia. I'll talk about the actual strategies that the Elite Four and Cynthia employ later in the video, because the difficulty of these battles are inherently good, but they are not a good justification as to why your entire gym leader experience should be downgraded. This difficulty jump is very unprecedented. In fact, this was fixed in Platinum. If the solution to the EXP Share's overleveling problem was to have a large team of 12 like I did, then that ultimately made the Elite Four and Cynthia too hard, cause I was not overleveled against competitive teams. But if I had a party of just 6, my Pokemon would be overleveled enough to make battles against the Elite Four and Cynthia more fair and balanced, but then my battles against the gym leaders would be too easy. It just seems like there is some kind of level scaling issue no matter how I play. I'm done talking about the biggest flaws in the game. Time to talk about my general experience playing the game. Cause even though I've been talking about these glaring problems that I've had, a majority of the time I was having fun. They brought back the exceptional world design of Gen 4 into Gen 8, a generation that has been lacking in exploration, at least before DLCs. While I don't miss random encounters, almost all of the good stuff in these games were in the original games. And I'm not here to review Diamond and Pearl, so I'm only going to talk about the good and bad things that are exclusive to these games. The major Gen 8 addition to these games technically fixed the biggest problem that all Sinnoh games had, and that was the HMs. While it wasn't a perfect solution to make a wild Bibarel or Staraptor come to my aid via the Pokétch, at least I finally have the freedom to compose my team without the mandatory water or flying type. Out of all the environmental changes they could make, the one that they did do was block the secret entrance to Wayward Cave with strength boulders, so you couldn't get a Gibble at the correct part in the game they were designed to be acquired. And even worse, I don't think going back to breakable TMs was a positive change in the long run. What's the point of a remake if I can't have more options for team building? I do like how the extra features that were added into the game, like following Pokemon and the ground underground, were gradually given to you, so that you have some kind of thing to look forward to if you're already playing the originals. This made some of the best parts of the game feel fresh, like the Grand Underground was, for the most part, the most innovative part of the game. Aside from the lack of secret base decorations for no apparent reason, it was exactly what I imagined the underground needed to be. The hideaways were literally the best looking places in the game and had the best battle backgrounds. I finally had access to rare Pokemon earlier in the game, and the internet option easily allowed me to dig with others and find secret bases. Not to mention, the new Diglett catching mechanic was a cool way to grant bonus luck. The way the Pokemon in the underground have their levels scaled, like in Galar's Wild area, was a welcome surprise, and will definitely help people grind before the Elite Four if they need to. Following Pokemon were also a fine addition at the end of the day, but it kinda made Amity Square obsolete. There is no reason to still make it exclusive to cute Pokemon. But the biggest mistake was making the following Pokemon speed like in Sword and Shield, which at the very least was somewhat presentable in the DLC because you could control the camera and look back at your Pokemon. But when you outpace them in these games, you won't see them unless they come back to you in an admittedly more animated fashion than in Sword and Shield. But controlling the player character wasn't easy either. I would constantly bump into things and the bike was practically unusable. The menus were also fighting me for some reason. Say what you want, but modern Pokemon menus in Game Freak games are very intuitive, but in BDSP they're slow and crude. I would have to press things multiple times for them to work. I'm glad the Poketch is back in an unobstructive way, but in the original games, considering how much there is to explore, the Dowsing Machine app was my best friend. But in BDSP, I can't use it properly because the player isn't able to move while pressing on the Poketch. It's not how the Dowsing Machine was designed to work. Pretty dull. Unlike the Elite Four. I've been asking for this for years. Mandatory in-game battles that implement competitive strategies. That's what the best trainers in the game would be doing. Each Elite Four member was harder to defeat than the last for me. These battles stuck out in my mind with sets like Flint's Will-O-Wisping, Strength Sapping, Minimizing Driftblim, that baton passes over to a Focus-Sashed Infernape, and the AI was flawless too. Like when Lucian sent out his sap-sipping Girafarig when I was using my Grass-type Pokemon. I was around the same level as Bertha's team when I entered the Pokemon League, so the fights were fair yet very satisfying. But Cynthia was a different story. 5 out of her 6 Pokemon gave me hell, but I have never faced a more challenging Pokemon than her flame-orbed Milotic with Recover and a Yachi Berry-eating Garchomp that was faster than any of my Pokemon and had a super effective move for every single Pokemon of mine. It took me 3 hours to defeat her. Longer than any battle I've ever had in Pokemon. Again, remember that my Pokemon were pretty much 6 to 8 levels below hers and had no affection. I didn't bring any fairy types and my team wasn't tailored to defeat any specific trainer. This will be the most memorable battle I've ever had. Slightly above Ultra Necrozma in red. I screamed and strained my throat when I finally defeated her with my last Pokemon 1 move away from being knocked out after using a ton of revives. And let's not forget about the competitive level rematches in the postgame. I have my gripes about the EXP Share, but the late game battles are some of the best in the franchise. The postgame is pretty much Diamond and Pearl's postgame, which was already an above average postgame, especially for a non-third version. I'm not going to talk about the things that were in the originals, so Ramana's Park is really the only thing that is new. It's a positive, a unique way to catch legendaries, and a smart way to make use of the underground to mine shards that we trade for slates that unlock legendaries. These games are also riddled with glitches. Makes you realize how Game Freak games from the last decade are actually pretty solid when it comes to making sure the game isn't literally broken. But none of these glitches contribute to any bad experiences. I may even utilize the super easy to perform item duplication glitch in any future playthrough so I can finally have multiple TMs and play how I intended to. I hope that glitch is not patched. The art style in general isn't offensive like it was when it was revealed. The colors have way more harmony and the lighting is pretty awesome. While chibi style isn't my favorite, it's a neutral aspect to this game for me. It's not how I personally want future Pokemon games to look, but I don't overreact like it's physically hard to look at. The game is pretty at times, but like I said in the beginning, it suffers from being too faithful to the aesthetic of the originals. The menus and UI are a nice nod to Diamond and Pearls. I can dig it, but every location and interior looking exactly like it did in 2006 makes the game look bland. This has nothing to do with the style or skill of the artists, it's just a choice they made that didn't resonate with me. What I do want to praise is the lighting in this game. It's my favorite thing about BDSP. While the actual surfaces and textures aren't as photoreal as other Pokemon games, the literal lighting feels the most realistic to me. And that's the correct way to do stylized games. This is the only element that elevated what the original games were intending to do. The morning feels like morning with fog in elevated places and a long shadow that points east. The sunset is my absolute favorite time of day to play these games, and it really feels like the sun is setting on Sinnoh. These are the most nostalgic elements in the game, not the things that look exactly like the original, but rather the things that amplify what was there in the original. This is how the games felt when we were kids, even when there wasn't any shadows or photoreal lighting. That's why I was praising places like Snow Point. As a child, that place felt like it was freezing, so adding frost and snow on the buildings amplifies the game and makes it feel like how I once felt. When they translate locations without these elements, for the sake of faithfulness, it doesn't feel whimsical. Like how, for example, in the Galactic HQ, the interior is block for block the same as in Diamond and Pearl. It doesn't feel like the high-tech hideout we envisioned we were running through as kids. Compare that to Oras and its rendition of the Aqua hideout. It's technically faithful, but it's incredibly detailed and only adds to flesh out the world. An atmospheric entrance, tons of computers, machines, and servers, it's how it felt like as a kid, while the faithful graphics of BDSP make it feel exactly how I felt playing Diamond and Pearl as an adult a few years ago. There are a ton of locations that are beautiful despite this critique, because they work regardless, like the lakes, Floroma, Eterna Forest, Valor Lakefront, and any place with snow and cities during the sunset. However, rainy places look extremely flat, since there's no ambient occlusion, or simply ambient shadows between the trees. The water physics looks really good when surfing, and the battle backgrounds are also some of the best in the franchise, and the lighting and shadows are great there too. I'm really happy about how the colors turned out, but there aren't a good variety of battle backgrounds above ground. Every route looks the same, and while for some reason there are more interior battle backgrounds than in Sword and Shield, important battles like with Barry don't have battle backgrounds. It's pretty inconsistent, and in all of them, the trees don't move. It's very dull. The only battle background I was truly disappointed with was Eterna Forest. Compared to all the other forest backgrounds in the last 3 generations, it's kind of the blandest. And once again, I don't understand why we still don't have properly scaled Pokemon in battle. And finally, I do think the human character animation is not as good as the ones in Sword and Shield. Say what you will about the animation in Galar, but the characters were very lively and full of personality, while the trainers are pretty stiff in BDSP. Going into these games, the music was the #1 thing I was looking forward to, and I can say that I wasn't disappointed. I do prefer getting some new arrangements in remakes, like how Oras had the Primal Reversion theme and revamped Archie and Maxi Battle theme, but they try to be faithful with the soundtrack as well, and the result was pretty good. Almost all the tracks are as good or even better than the original. The only ones that really disappointed me were Cyrus's battle theme and Route 210, but there are way more themes that they nailed, like Eterna Forest and Route 209. I can't believe that after a decade of anticipation, themes like those ended up being as good as I imagined. I was really glad they added extra instruments to the Elite Four theme to differentiate it from the Gym Leader theme. I wish they did more of that to perhaps make Celestic Town and Eterna City have a slightly different vibe, but I can't complain. I'm a happy boy. There are a ton of tracks I want to mention, but my opinion of them is pretty much the same as it was in my top 20, except that they are now remastered and sound better. When it comes to a rating, I think fans of Pokemon prioritize different things, so what I like may be completely different if you play Pokemon for aspects that I don't care about. These games are great for the music alone, while to other it literally doesn't matter. I'd say if you never played the originals, this is your time to finally play a classic Pokemon game. Diamond and Pearl are now obsolete unless you despise the art style of BDSP. If you played the originals, this does feel like those games on the Switch. If you prioritize Platinum's changes and updates, it's far from perfect. If you prefer tile-based Pokemon and chibi art styles, then these are for you. Especially if you're the type of fan who didn't like the changes Oras made to the world and lore of Ruby and Sapphire. To a person like me who plays Pokemon games to assemble, train, and bond with a team of Pokemon as I journey through the Pokemon world, then this is another enjoyable Pokemon game. It's a very good entry-level title too, but it also has a nice challenge for veteran players, especially if you manage to account for the EXP Share. At the end of the day, these games were made to be as faithful as can be so that fans can play Pokemon Legends Arceus if they prefer a Sinnoh-based game with unique gameplay and modern Pokemon graphics. When it comes to it, the backbone of Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are too strong for my gripes to overpower. Its glaring flaws can be worked around in my future playthroughs, and Sinnoh is now a region I can enjoy even more without the restrictions of HMs. And if you enjoyed this review, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't. Check out the description for all the links, like my social media, my Patreon where you can get cool rewards like seeing my videos days early or even discount on my merch. And check out all my other videos if you haven't. Not all of them are reviews and they're kinda even better than this one. I'll see you guys next week in a video where I make Hisuian forms. Bye!